Arthur Caldwell's here for Ultimate Motorcycling Magazine, and today we're looking at the Kawasaki H2 SX. The SX is the sport touring version of the H2R, this 998cc inline-four cylinder supercharged engine, first debuted a couple of years ago on the H2R. It was a track-only bike, very exotic. Kawasaki had to develop a lot of technology just to really make the thing work. It was expensive and it was cool, and it put out reputedly over 300 horsepower. So it was an amazing accomplishment, but for a very, very tiny market. Kawasaki subsequently put out the H2, which was the street-going version of that bike. Again, expensive, exotic, small market. Now, having developed the engineering, Kawasaki clearly felt that it would be worth trying to put this into a real-world motorcycle. And this is what we have with the SX. And I have to say, the SX, despite being the most powerful motorcycle I have ever ridden, quite substantially, interestingly, the Kawasaki H2 SX is also very user-friendly, almost easy to ride. The supercharger sits right here. Supercharging means it is forced induction. In other words, a gear-driven impeller compresses mixture and forces it into the engine. Unlike a turbocharger, a supercharger, because it is geared to the crankshaft, it is constantly operating. So at low revs you have very low boost, at high revs you have very high boost. Now Kawasaki have optimized this supercharger for more mid-range, because if the bike really needed that. Kawasaki do not claim a peak horsepower output, despite claiming on the H2R that it put out over 300 horsepower. This, I would guess, is probably in excess of 200 horsepower. Exactly how much, we're not sure. We need to put it on a dyno. What I can tell you, this is quite substantially the most powerful motorcycle I have ever ridden. It is absolutely astonishing. In second gear, roll on second gear, roll on third gear, heck, roll on in any gear. As you feel the pressure start to build and that supercharger start to wind up, my goodness, this thing just takes off. So from 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, you can just accelerate hard, you can go through the gears and all the way up to sixth gear, and in a matter of moments, you are deep into treble digits. As in over 150 miles an hour. This thing is absolutely astonishing. But aside from just peak horsepower lunacy, which of course is very addicting, but aside from that, interestingly, Kawasaki have managed to make the SX an extremely easy to ride, user-friendly motorcycle. Sure, the mid-range is astonishing, but actually, if you're just simply riding around, and not necessarily around town, although it's easy to ride around town, but if you're just simply out cruising the highways or cruising the canyons, the H2 SX works incredibly well. It is easy to ride, the fueling on it is smooth. It can be a little jerky in the lower gears, but I mean Kawasaki have got the fueling well sorted on this. So, and just purely taking away the whole supercharging insane power thing, as a motorcycle, the Kawasaki SX works incredibly well. Now, this particular model here is the SE version of it. This is the slightly more expensive one. The standard SX retails at about $19,000. This one retails at about $22,000. Now, for that, you get obviously the green color scheme, you get braided lines, you get the quick shifter. This is a quick up shifter as well as a blip down shifter. And I have to say, the Kawasaki's gearbox on this is so smooth that quick shifter really can take full advantage of that. It's a really nice feature. Kawasaki claim this is a sport tourer. I would tell you that as a sport tourer, it's about 80% sport and about 20% tour. I mean, in truth, you can sport tour on anything, but as sport tourers go, this is very much more on the sporting end of the scale. The riding position is fairly aggressive. You're fairly lean forward. The windshield is fairly low and sporting, although Kawasaki do offer as an accessory a more flipped up, taller windshield. You can buy accessory bags that very neatly don't require any adding kit on it. There's no fitting, they just simply slot into these slots and on they go. But they are $1,200. But they're color matched to the bike and they're beautiful. As a sport tourer, Kawasaki have also included heated grips on here, which is very nice as standard. It has cruise control, which is also very nice, and it has a 12-volt power takeoff. So there is definitely a nod to sport touring here. Interestingly, if you're easy on the throttle, the gas consumption is really very good on this. In fact, I've been seeing over 50 miles to the gallon if I just take it easy. If you resist the, oh, let's see what this thing will do type of urge, and I'm not the greatest resistor of those kind of urges, but if you ride this thing normally, yes, actually it does extremely good MPG. The other thing that I need a shout out to is the KYB suspension on here. Now this is not electronically adjusted suspension, so there are no sort of modes on suspension. However, as standard suspension, it is really very well sorted. It's extremely well sorted. Now this is a 580 pound bike, so it's about 100 pounds more than your typical, liter sport bike. But as a sport bike, this thing handles incredibly well, and the suspension soaks everything up extremely well too. You have a hand adjustable preload rear shock adjuster here, and at the front it's just conventional with a wrench. So you can adjust the preload if you want, but frankly, just on the standard settings, this bike handles really exceptionally well. Now, in sport tourer terms, it's actually quite light, 560 pounds. If you're going up against Yamaha FJRs, even Kawasaki's own ZXR14, this bike is actually quite light. And the weight, of course, does disappear once you're rolling. Standing on it, it feels a little top heavy if you're just at the lights and just with your feet flat on the ground. And when you turn in, it turns in very quickly. But I have to say, it holds its line incredibly well. You can ride this thing hard like a sport bike. And of course, with that intoxicating mid-range, you just open the gas in any gear and this thing will jet out of corners like you're on fire. Kawasaki also have its KTRC traction control. It has cornering ABS. The traction control is IMU driven, so there is lean angle incorporated into both the ABS and the traction control. And interestingly, at the front, we have Kawasaki's turning lights. Now this is a first for Kawasaki, but essentially at 10 degrees of lean, the first light comes on, at 20 degrees the second, and at 30 degrees the third. So at night, if you're riding and you're leaning, the lights will illuminate around the corner for you. So that's a very nice touch. But overall, what a fantastic bike this is. This is absolutely, it's crazy, insanely, intensely powerful. And that is no exaggeration. This thing is very, very powerful. But it's not a monster. It is an easy to ride, user-friendly. Sure, it's an expert level bike, but it's a lovely experience to ride. I would happily go sport touring on it. It's comfortable. The foot pegs are high, are in a sport position, so it is not going to be as comfortable as a lot of the sport touring bikes out there. But if you prefer your sport touring to be more sport than touring, you are going to absolutely love this bike.